Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world. I deeply desire to expand, to experience, to know, to understand, to control, to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and to those who follow me. I deeply desire the help and cooperation, the assistance, the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, and experience are equal to or greater than my own. I ask their guidance and protection from any influence or any source that might provide me with less than my stated desires.
Do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. Do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden. As a part of a family and explorers of consciousness. I'm the void one.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Oh, broadcasting live from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void live. We are on the Fringe FM, www.fringe.fm. And tonight, Jeff Harman is our guest tonight, and we will be talking about the eclipse, the upcoming eclipse, the energies that are involved with it. We always get a bit deep into astrology with Jeff. And so we're broadcasting live on the Fringe FM, YouTube, Twitch, and I believe Rumble. So I'm really pushing it right now, which probably, I did run a test, but you know me, take it in the teeth before it's all over with. Now listen, the call-in number, if we open the phone lines up, is 501-777-5631. And if you can, please support the Fringe FM as it's coming towards the end of the month, and we really need your support so that the station can keep moving forward. And for all those that have supported, thank you guys so much. All right. So I want to get into this. Jeff Harman's here with us. Now, you can go to his website at jeffharman.com. That's spelled Harman. And Jeff has been doing astrology practically all of his life, for the majority of his life. It's been handed down to him through his family, and he's a spiritual cleanser. He also does gemology, and his YouTube channel. If you guys haven't subscribed to his YouTube channel, you need to go subscribe to his YouTube channel now, like right now, because I watch certain people's YouTube channels, and there are a few people out there that are putting out quality information that's really going to help you spiritually to handle what's coming up, right? So it's hard for us in this day and age to weed through all of the stuff to get really good spiritual advice. And you will not find a better astrologer than Jeff Harman. So Jeff's here with us, and thank you for coming on, Jeff. It's good to have you back on the broadcast, brother.
And me. Thanks for having me.
What is up with, what are we in for this eclipse, man?
Well, you know, it's not just the eclipse, and I'm glad you brought that up, man, because it's good to be back, Joe. It's good, and thanks for the push on the YouTube channel.
No, it's great. We're really
just fresh
stuff.
and new. We're trying to get people to come and see what we're doing, so that's great. Yeah, what's going on with this eclipse? You know, you really got to take it up to 100,000 feet, or if you like, 100,000 light years, right, and look down, or the ultimate dimensions. Here we go. Now I just got me another cup of coffee, a latte. Now it's going to be a good show. Right. So. 100-mile coffee. I got 100-mile coffee. You don't blink for 100 miles with these lattes. I love it. So yeah, the cool thing about what's happening right now in the bigger picture, we got to kind of look at what's been happening since 2020. 2020 was, you know, the area I always focused on. Everybody used to say to me on shows, what do you think of the Mayan calendar? And I said, not a single thing. I said, I can't come up with anything on the Mayan calendar ending in 2012. And 2020 is clearly, you know, been the trigger point with COVID, but more than COVID. We had a 240-year mutation conjunction on the winter solstice of 2020. So not only we had the whole fiasco of COVID and the world global shutdown, but we had a new era start. And, I was kind of busting on that in my last YouTube broadcast, where it's kind of been like AI. It's just nothing but AI. And AI is expanding like we've never seen before. We are taking off like a bat out of hell in this new era in technology. And the owners at the top of the pyramid, they truly do think they can wipe out 3/4 of the human race and replace us all with AI. And it's kind of scary. Where does this eclipse fit into this? Well, the United States is going through a Pluto return for literally this entire year. Now, the tropical astrologers would say, well, but that already happened. Yes, but now, in fact, that actually happened right when the current president, or whatever you want to call him, got in 2020 in the tropical zodiac. But you got to remember the sidereal zodiac has the precession of the equinoxes taken into account. So in the sidereal system, we're actually getting in to the 3 or triple hits of Pluto returning to Pluto. And I know a lot of astronomers have all said, Pluto's not a planet anymore, but I got news for you. Dynamite comes in small packages too. And Pluto always brings transformation, destruction, and rebuilding on the ashes. Just to give you an idea what that one's about, literally the Roman Empire was destroyed on its second Pluto return. The United States is having its first one. And look at what we see, the borders. We see, the infiltration. I was just listening to a guy in an Uber who basically was saying, one of the people in the Uber car was saying, oh yeah, the UN brought me in here. They're paying me. And I'm just waiting for orders. What's coming, folks? What's coming? Well, this eclipse might have a lot to do with that. Why? Because this eclipse actually happens very powerfully. It's called Saros Cycles 8 North, but it's also coupled with Mars and a Saturn conjunction right after that. Everyone can feel the tension. It's like a spring wound up, right? This last full moon was actually the lunar eclipse that was the precursor eclipse to the actual eclipse. They call it a penumbra or an applause eclipse. And I got to tell you, why it's so powerful is because of what it's sitting on all the other tensions in the world. And, it's interesting. A lot of people, have had me do work in research in UFO or ufology and also in remote view. And I get around some of these camps and I really enjoy it. In fact, I even worked with Jim Delatoso years ago on the Phoenix Lights. I was actually looking over his shoulder on a lot of that footage. And that stuff is definitely real. And I really believe that there are entities not only on this earth, but in this earth. And I think there's demonic forces that are intertwined right with the molecular structures of this world and this universe, this lower universe. In fact, it fits the stories of the Garden of Eden story. We also have the same stories in the Bhagavad Gita and many other ancient cultures. And I think they're literally incarcerated right into matter because everything beneath the moon will be born, it will grow, it will mature, it will atrophy, and it will be destroyed. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And these eclipses are actually formed by when the sun and the moon and the earth align. That's all an eclipse is. And it's because of the angularity of the moon and all its what we call ecliptical obliquity. It's a fancy word that just means it's at an angle, right? And the earth is at a 23-degree, 44-minute angle as well, or 45 minutes thereabouts. And when the ecliptic orbital path of the sun and the earth and the moon all align, we get an occultation. But here's this cool. Can I show a diagram here?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Let me do this. I want to show you this. This is really cool because what's going on here, this is actually the chart of the eclipse right here, you can see. And what I like about showing these charts is all an eclipse can happen. Eclipses can only happen on either a new moon or a full moon. Can't happen any other time. And you can see up here at the top of the chart where I'm circling here, when the sun and the moon conjunct, which is a fancy term in astrology, means they're at 0 degrees. They're together, right? But that happens every month. But why do we only get eclipses at a certain time? Because it's when the sun and the moon and the earth and the moon's ecliptical path align. See, those are called the nodes. This is where the head of the dragon legend comes from. See, and you can see there's 3 names to the north node. Some people call it the north node, or they call it the head of the dragon, and they call it also Rahu in Vedic and in Naadi astrology. They're all synonymous. They're the same thing. So depends on what you call them. But it's interesting where this all comes from. This ancient legend was that a demon snuck in when all the angelic forces and the planets were being formed, and the angels of the sun were believed to have told God, hey, this demon snuck in, and it also has become a part of this immortalness of the solar system. And they threw a discus at it, and it cut in half, and the head became Rahu, and the tail became Ketu. Notice Ketu also is the tail of the dragon, or the south node. And what does it represent? Well, the head of the dragon represents, just like Shakespeare said, the whole world's a stage, and we're the actors, and the movie we're all playing, our perception of reality, or the physical illusion of reality, happens from Rahu, and Ketu is the exit from this dimension, or escape from Alcatraz, if you will, and liberation in moksha. See, moksha is a strange word in Sanskrit and Tamil that actually means liberation from reincarnation. That's what it means. That's one of the meanings. So it's separation. You know, if you get around the yogis in India, they'll all tell you, oh, the whole physical world's an illusion, right? Christians might recognize this as the phrase that, you know, pay no attention to this physical world because it's all subject to moth and rust, right? And the interesting thing about that is we seem, as long as we're enamored with the physical world, to always be playing the Rahu Ketu game, which is the reincarnational game. So when eclipses happen, they're really powerful. Now, this is a full moon eclipse on the 8th of April. And I'll show you something really cool. The path of that eclipse, here, I'll show you here. Let me fire this up. And what we're going to do is turn on eclipses. And you can see if I turn this on, the nearest one is going to be April 8th. I got to select the eclipse here. I did the wrong thing. There we go. You select eclipse. Yeah, we want the April 8th. That's it.
This thing kind of messed up my software, but it's still cool. I can see it all, so it's cool.
Oh, you can? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know, for those who can't see, what I'm showing right now is a diagram of the United States, or North America, if you will, and this red 0 degrees line. In fact, you know, you can always go to my YouTube and watch this coming up this Monday. We're going to do the same thing. But what's cool is this line that I'm tracing here, which really cuts across the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, cuts across kind of south central Texas through Arkansas, right over you, Joe. And then you're going to get up through southern Illinois, cuts across Ohio, and all that, and right out into the ocean again. Actually cuts right across just above New Brunswick there and above Nova Scotia. So what's cool is if you're on that position, you're going to totally see the eclipse. That's 0 degrees. If you're like in Arizona or New Mexico, you'll see it, but only 75%. And as we go north in the United States, you'll see 50% of it in central California, up through Idaho and central Montana. If you start getting north of that, up in the Canadians will probably only see 25% of it at most. So this is why the alignment is so important, because it's where it stripes across when the moon is either new or full at its ecliptic angle. And people freak out a lot about eclipses. There's something very mysterious about them. But let me demystify it just a little bit. The eclipses, you got to hand credit here to the Chaldeans, the Egyptians, the Mesopotamians, and the Greeks, because, and no one really knows, but what's interesting is they knew that these eclipses happened at the North and South Pole. This Saros Cycles 8, actually, this eclipse happening on the 8th of April, actually began in 1501. It was actually May 17th of 1501. And that's a long time ago. You're pushing 500 plus years ago.
Right.
So that's when it began at the North Pole. And these series keep coming back over time. This eclipse actually ends in the year 2745. That's where it ends. But it's not ending. It's just dropping across the center of the United States on the 8th.
That's what I was going to ask you. So we have eclipses all the time, all over the place.
Yeah, that's right.
Does it affect, it's kind of a rhetorical question, but I'm not sure how to understand how it affects the people that are directly, does it affect the people that are directly in its path more than just the overall world itself?
It kind of does. They say where the eclipse happens, a lot of the ancients were very mysterious about eclipses. They wouldn't even look at them. They go block up their chimneys and stuff like that. There was always believed to be kind of an occult negative energy. But I think that kind of got, dispelled when the tables of the Chaldeans and all this stuff came out. This eclipse is actually very unique. It's a kind of a complex astrological analysis, but the new moon actually happens on a Uranus-Mercury-Venus midpoint. And it's also a Pluto-Venus-Saturn. And then you've also got the new moon, of course, is conjunct the node. And this is very powerful because it's conjunct Rahu. See, the new moon is happening conjuncting the north node. See, this is what's interesting is, the moon appears to slow down and speed up every month. Well, when it goes above the ecliptic, it appears to be faster to us in the northern hemisphere. And when it goes in the southern hemisphere, it tends to slow down. And the moon is very serious. When you look at it, people will notice sometimes that it's huge when it comes up over the horizon.
Yeah.
See, that's the perigee and apogee when it's close and farther away. So that's kind of the astronomy. And there is actually a lot of ancient knowledge that when planets literally conjunct the ecliptical plane of the Earth, every day you can have a moon trine Venus, or every week or every month. You can have all these aspects going on with planets. But their ecliptical longitude, it's actually called declination. If something is above the ecliptic a long ways, it's not as powerful of an aspect as it is when it's right on the ecliptical plane of the Earth. Well, that's what an eclipse is. The sun and the moon, or the new moon, is happening aligned right with the ecliptical path of the Earth. And of course, most powerfully right where it's happening across the United States. So these points stay hot for a long time, and Mars is going to cross that eclipse point. See, in a tropical zodiac, that's actually going to happen at 19 degrees Aries, 24 minutes, you see. So it's very, very powerful. In the sidereal, here, I'm going to get that up in just a second. The sidereal will be, I'll give it to you in 2 seconds here. 4, 8. I just got to crank it in here. And that's on West Coast time. It'll be 11:21.
Parashara's Light. That's the only software I don't have. I'm still learning Solar Fire. Jeez, it's a lot.
Yeah, Solar Fire is amazing. Yeah. Love Solar Fire. Yeah. See, now that's going to be happening right conjunct Rahu. See, you can only get an eclipse when the nodes are exactly or very close to the new moon. Now, there's a few degrees of minutes change here, only because I'm looking at this from the West Coast. If we cast this right where you were, it would actually have the node be very, very close. So this is happening in a lunar mansion that's very, very powerful. See, it's going to happen in the lunar mansion of Revati. So that's when the new moon actually happens. Now, you might say, what does that mean? Well, again, this is a lot of energy connected with intelligence and out of the blue flashes of information. In fact, that's, instead of giving everybody all this astrology, people say, well, just tell me in plain English, what does this eclipse mean? Inventiveness has a lot to do with flashes of genius and revelations of knowledge. And this is kind of the hallmark of this eclipse series. And so I don't think the world's going to end. I hear this all the time. Every time there's a major eclipse, all my life I've seen it, people haul out the lawn chairs and they're ready to, jump off a cliff. And I'm like, no, this is not that bad of an eclipse at all. The key is what is it doing to the United States? See, this is where I'm more at. I'm more concerned about that Mars-Saturn conjunction. It actually happens on the 10th of April, 2 days after the eclipse. You see? So that eclipse point is going to be transited by the Mars very soon after the eclipse. Here, I can actually.
I think a lot of people, honestly, a lot of people are worried about like what it's going to do to them individually, for sure. But I mean, the United States does affect us too. So.
Oh yeah. Well, see, that's you just hit on it, Joe. That's exactly it. Because I tell people get much more concerned about where is it in your chart. Now, it could be really good. You want to look at the house that it's happening in, and you also want to look at the aspects it's making. And see, there's not a single one of us drawing breath who will experience it the same way because everybody's chart's different. Yeah, see, Mars crosses that eclipse point right about the 25th of May, give or take. That's when it crosses that. And that's when I see trouble in the United States. So eclipses are mysterious because when they happen, they have their inherent energy, but they're like a hot point in the chart. It's almost like an impression made in cement that stays hard for a while and it holds there. It eventually dissipates, but these are very, very powerful. So it is, again, March 25th is when Mars will cross that. And that's when it gets intense because Mars is strong and it's carrying with it a lot of powerful energy this year. Now, I can look at what is it doing to the United States. That's a big thing. See, the United States is what I'm really worried about. And the reason why, if there was any entity in the crosshairs of the owners at the top of the pyramid, it is the United States. Why? Because it stands directly in the path of the New One World Order. And, you know, everybody's heard Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and everybody else talking about how they think they can replace us all and wipe us out and replace us all, of course, with, AI. And listen to Klaus Schwab. Whoever controls AI will be the ruler of the world. I'm like, what am I listening to here? Yeah. Austin Powers, Dr. Evil movie? I mean, these people really believe this. And, I did a podcast a while back on something called a book that was put out by Thompson, really good book. And it's called The Great Taking. It's actually free. He was a Wall Street, guy who made millions of dollars, actually handled billions in hedge funds. And he wrote this book because he's very concerned about the United States and the world and what they're doing financially. And he was talking about George Soros. He used to do business with George Soros. And he said, George Soros is not the top guy. Everybody talks about him. Neither is Klaus Schwab. And they always mention that guy is at the top of the pyramid. You see, so the United States, even though we're talking about the eclipse, is under great duress because of its Pluto return. And the biggest problem we got, I want to see where this eclipse happens in the United States and how it lines up with the chart. I haven't worked on that yet. I'm doing this for the next podcast. So, this next eclipse is happening in the 4th house of the United States on April 8th. Yeah, that's not good because it's also making a...
Like how honest you are about it. That's not good.
No, well, because it's going to put more exacerbation when Mars crosses in May and June. I really think they're getting ready for a big false flag event here in the United States. They do not want Trump in at all. And if they can't stop him legally, and boy, they're trying, let me tell you, even though Trump had some success, and I'm not here promoting Trump, what I am saying is I think Trump represents the nationalists, meaning they want to keep the sovereign country. The other ones represent the dystopia. They literally want a one world government. And the bankers are coming in. They're funding the UN. They're planting Chinese all over this place. They love China. Why? Because China has retina scans, digital currency, and it's communism. And it's the perfect model that they want to institute here. And they know it's not going to be easy to get America. And I think if they can they're slowly eroding all the constitutional stuff. And this is why there's so much dissension with the crime, the constant infiltrating of the borders. They're diluting and destroying America. And that's the Pluto return. And it's mirroring the astrology to the T. So this eclipse becomes germane because the eclipse itself is not bad. It may be good in a person's chart. You have to examine your birth chart. But what the issue is that eclipse point is happening in the fourth house of the United States. And it does square the ascendant, which is the people. And the biggest issue is Mars will cross the fourth house cusp of the United States, first time in 2 years. It does it every 2 years, in the end of May. And that's where it's going to, actually, no, I stand corrected. The Mars will cross the fourth house cusp of the U.S. a lot closer to the beginning of May. Yeah, it'll be right around the first week of May. But then the biggest issue is it's going to cross that eclipse point May 25th. So that's where eclipses really seem to shine, is their karmic heart points, or portals almost, that seem to bring very mysterious energies, and people all experience them differently depending on where it is in your chart, what house it is, what aspects it was made, and also, what you've got going on in the background. And the United States has some tough stuff going on in the background. It really, really does.
Yeah, I think, well, let me ask you this. What do we, like when we look in our charts here in the eclipse, let's say we're using solar fire, because I use solar fire.
Yeah.
What are we looking for? What do we need to look at?
Oh, you want to look at what house first you're looking at. Here, let me fire up your chart, Joe. Is that okay? Can I?
Yeah, that's totally fine, man. Put me on blast. I'm good for it.
Okay, good. Yeah. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going to get up Joe's chart. See, you're in here someplace. Through
Jeff's extensive list of clients there.
Yeah, that's actually not a full one there. That's I keep archiving them. Yeah, I can't believe that's 3,300 charts right there. Let me just see here. I probably have over 10,000, and I'm not exaggerating. So yeah, okay, that's your chart. So what we do is and this is really going to be good because Joe, you're right where the eclipse is going through. So that is going to happen. Wow, Joe, got a birthday coming up.
Yeah, a few days, man, just a couple days.
Yeah, see that. See, I can see the sun. See, that's how you tell when somebody's birthday. The sun in the transit chart joins the natal sun. That's why they call it your birthday. See, every year it does that. So this is actually, wow, this is significant for you because it's happening 7 days after your birthday. So there's things called orbs of influence in astrology. So yeah, April 8th, let's roll that back to the exact time that it happens, which for you is probably going to be, let's see, it was, here, I'll just line it up here by eye here. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit earlier for you because you're Central Time. So yeah, it'll be 2 hours earlier. So it's going to be 8:21 a.m. your time. So for all you people in the center of the United States,
in Arkansas,
you got to adjust. Yeah, you're in Arkansas, so you're Central Time.
Yeah.
So, and this adjusts for daylight savings time. So yeah, that eclipse, I stand corrected here. It might be, hold on a minute, I did it wrong. It's actually going to be 9. Yeah, it's 9:21. So yeah, because you're 2 hours difference and it's 11:21 here. See, we're later on the West Coast. So, and if you're East Coast, this will be happening at 8:21 approximately for you. So yeah, that's actually, wait a minute, why is that happening? See, that's the hold on a minute.
Yeah, so we're an hour behind the East Coast and 2 hours in front of the West Coast.
Front of the West Coast, yeah. So I stand corrected. It's going to be at,
God, I missed the East Coast.
It's going to be 12:21 now. Yeah, let me get it lined up. Yeah, sorry here. That's right. It's going to be 12:21. Now that's really powerful for you, Joe. Why? Because that's happening on the cusp of your 7th house. So again, people might say, what does that mean? Well, the 7th house See, if anybody's familiar with astrology out there watching this, each of these little pie slices known as terrestrial houses are ruling an area of everyone's life. So even though your sun is in the 6th, notice your descendant, if my birth time is right, should be at 19 degrees, 26 minutes of tropical Aries. So what does that mean in plain English? Well, that means this eclipse is happening at 19 degrees, 23 minutes. So that means this is happening within 3 minutes of arc to the opposition of your ascendant and the conjunction of your descendant. So this is going to have a powerful effect on you, Joe. Why? Because the eclipse is opposite the ascendant and conjunct the descendant. Moreover, it's squaring your let me just make sure I'm right. It's squaring your moon in your chart. Yep. Yeah, that eclipse makes a 90-degree aspect to your moon. So you can see that right here within 3 minutes of arc. It also squares your Mercury. So you just look at all the aspects it makes. The moon and the sun is also direct. That eclipse is directly opposed your Saturn. Directly. Look at that. Within 4 minutes of arc. So every single individual is going to experience this entirely different. Entirely different.
Is that good
See,
or bad? I mean, Saturn is like,
I don't like to use words of good and bad. It's not descriptive enough. There's a lot more flavors in the descriptions than good and bad. But sure. I would say you got to watch it from one standpoint because it could affect the home and the family. The reason why, see, this is how you do astrology. The Lord of your 4th and 5th is Saturn. See, so the eclipse is 7th from the Lord of the 4th, which is, it's opposed Saturn in the ascendant and also the 4th house cusp. So you may have issues coming up with moving over this next year, or you also may find that it's a really powerful time for you with respect to, home matters and family. So
like relationships. Are you afraid to say it? Relationships too.
Well, relationships could happen, but it's more the opposition to Saturn that I would pay more attention to. See, now what I would do, if you really wanted to know, what I would do is cast a chart. I would literally cast a chart and say an interrogation. See, there's a lot of types of astrology. A lot of people are familiar with astrology in terms of their birth charts. They all know their sun signs, that's for sure. Yeah. But the point is that, see, there's many types of astrology. The type that most people are familiar with is their tropical birth sun sign. But there's Vedic astrology. So you got your birth charts. You also have location astrology, which is really powerful because if you live in a different place than you were born, your chart's going to really, and your transits are going to be really affected. The interrogation is a really cool type of astrology. It's divinational. Some people call it horary. That's the Latinized term. If you go to India, you'll hear them call it prashna. First thing out of their mouth, so let's cast a prashna. See, casting an interrogation, judicial, horary, or prashnas are all synonymous. What it is asking questions. That's all it is. You're asking a question. And you can ask questions about, what's going to happen? Is it my best interest to do this? Is it my best interest to do that? Where's my cat? I lost my cat. Where's my missing whatever? I've got so many stories. I literally have tens and thousands of these. I mean, they're amazing. And I use them in readings all the time because it's really supplemental so that I can see more of what's affecting the individual. And it's very, very cool stuff. They're called interrogation session charts. So, that's what I would do. But I would say this is just looking at this. Let me take a look here. Let's cast let's do this. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to cast a chart that says, Joe Roop, what's going to happen? Is this a crap storm or is this going to be fun?
Yeah, is this going to be
Yeah. What will be with Eclipse? All right. And that's a reasonable question because of the aspects it's making a chart. It's intense. I mean, that's going to be intense for you.
Yeah, the last time I had an eclipse, my life changed big time.
It's going to change this time too.
it came over, here, and I saw it. And from the next 4 years that happened were the craziest years of my life that I've had, and God knows how long, So now it's doing it again. And I'm back
yes,
here.
It is.
How the hell did that happen? That wasn't the plan.
Look at here. This is an interrogation. If you look on the screen here, notice I'm casting a chart. Joe Roop, what will be with the eclipse, right? That's all I'm asking. And I only type that in there so I know what he's asking, what the consciousness is. See, what's so cool about interrogation astrology is it's not your birth chart. It is for the moment that someone breaks their mind. I happen to be in West Hills, California, so you always cast it where the astrologer is. If you were casting the chart, you'd want to do it at where your location is. So what's good here is this tips the scales. The chart actually shows, well, you've been tired, haven't you, buddy? Yeah. The chart shows he's been tired. But what I like here is the all-important moon in the ascendant is going to trine again the Lord of the Fourth. You're probably going to move. Again? This is going to move. Right. Yeah, you're going to move again, but it probably will happen much more likely close to the time that you have that Mars crossing your eclipse point, which would be in the summer, late summer.
Right on. Okay.
Yeah. Or right before the summer solstice, somewhere between that time. Timing's hard to get, but I would say this chart kind of says in the next 4+ months. Well, here we sit almost in April. Do the math. April, May, June, July, August. So somewhere about like that, this eclipse is going to actually move you off center. See, now that's going to be totally different for someone else because of where it happens. See, mine's going to happen in my 9th house. See? So that'll have powerful implications on me. The 9th house is always spirituality or publishing or things like that. Right. And I'm actually working on a couple of projects right now that might help me. See, and you have to look at where does it happen. Also, too, it could really bring a relationship on the radar screen for you too, Joe. Why? Because it's happening on the cusp of the 7th house. Are you in one right now?
No, I don't know if I can no, not really. I don't think I can handle another relationship. That's what I'm tired from. I'm exhausted from it. Honestly.
You know what the best relationships are?
What?
The ones you don't need.
Right on, dude. Like I'm mentally, psychologically, and emotionally and physically exhausted from all of it,
Well, relationships can be a challenge. Yeah, they can be. Yeah, no doubt about that. Yeah. But that's an analysis. I would say this eclipse actually has a lot of really intuitive, ingenious stuff to it. And I would tell people this is going to bring a lot of good ideas, a lot of potential visions and vivid dreams are capable of this eclipse, newfound inspirations. So it's actually a lot more positive than everyone's making it out to be. And, a lot of superstition, again, surrounds eclipses. But my take is they're not, some can be bad. This one is not. The other thing here, let me just examine one more element to this. And I didn't look.
He's going to pull up okay. Let me switch screens again. I'm trying to keep up with you here. You're all right.
Oh, yeah. Let me just see the eclipse. I want to see if this is conjunct a fixed star. It is not. Okay, good. So the ascendant of that eclipse is one thing, but yeah. See, now I'll tell you, different people will experience this eclipse totally different throughout the world, even if it's not visual. There's a lot of lore. What people would do, the ancients would cast a chart in the area you were at, and you would look at the ascendant in that eclipse and where's the eclipse from the ascendant and what aspects did it make. And the part of fortune is always going to be on the ascendant when you get a new moon, because that's how the part of fortune. Okay. See, the part of fortune is a formula between the sun and the moon's distance. Well, where are they on a new moon? They're exactly together. So that's why it is on the ascendant, because the formula is the distance between the sun and the moon projected from the ascendant. So, and that changes by day and it changes by night. But this gets into very ancient stuff that the Egyptians, Chaldeans did, and they would use what they call lots. They're actually formulas where you project certain degree distances from signifactors, and you project them either from the ascendant, the moon, or the sun, or Saturn. And I have to say, they're pretty amazing. Certain ones are very, very accurate. They're called the lots. Some people call them Arabic.
Something you told me a long time ago really hit home, because I kept studying astrology, because there's so many, just with like regular astrology, there's so many inaccuracies that people have told me that just haven't, happened. But when I started looking at, like, I don't know how to explain this, but when I started looking at the Eastern astrology as more like my soul's journey, and then the Western astrology is kind of things that have happened, what's happening, the stuff kind of like that, it started kind of making sense. But I'm still pretty blurry on it, but it's starting to come together. Because I know that you told me that using both is the best way to go about it. But you got to be a pretty advanced astrologer to use both, I would think. Astrologer.
Yeah, I like using both. I really do. I have to say, a lot of people have heard of Vedic astrology, but Vedic astrology was actually a term that got coined probably back in the early 70s, late 60s by Chakrapani. He was a friend of mine. He passed away. He was in his late 80s. Nice guy. Came from India. And Chakrapani came to the conclusion, he said, Americans are never going to know what Jyotisha means. So when we're doing astrology over here, we're going to call it Vedic astrology, because everybody's heard of the Vedas, or you could say that term is easier to relate to because of that. So, but Vedic astrology really isn't the real name of it. Its real name is called Jyotisha, which means the science of the light of the soul. Right. And for anybody here on the screen, you can see this white etheric energy. Well, this is the magic of the soul and the spirit and the psyche. Now we start getting into something called karma. Now, all of us Americans and Westerners, we get a little queasy when we hear the word karma, right? It's like, oh, it's got to be bad. No, you can have good karma too. What's so fascinating about karma, and this is why I love Naadi astrology, they say when we're first born, the angel waits. And this is deep stuff. And the ancient Kabbalistic documents and Hermetic documents say the same thing. They say your soul is created way up here on this diagram, which is hundreds of dimensions above astrology. And what's fascinating is they say there's 49 dimensions and 49 subdimensions in these upper worlds called absolute.
Right.
And there's no planets like we know them here. The next world's down Brias, where the waters get much more dense. Again, 49 dimensions, 49 subdimensions. And the angels I'm circling here on the right are believed to rule these dimensions, very sacred. Well, many people have heard of a text called the Sefer Yetzirah, which means the of formation, right? That's a very well-known Kabbalistic or rabbinical text. And what's fascinating is Yetzirah simply means formation. But when you go down the rabbit hole, that's pretty deep, because it's not just formation, it's the whole molecular constructs.
Right. It's like the blueprints of everything, right?
Pretty much. Blueprints of everything.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's where the rotating galaxies are, and the black holes and all the stuff that's going on. I truly believe, in my opinion, that the stars in the heavens are portals to the upper sacred light of creation, pouring down into the lower dimensions of physicality. And what's fascinating, and this is so cool about Naadi astrology, they literally say that the guardian angel attaches the spirit, psyche, and soul to mom's embryo at conception, not at birth. And the Egyptians knew this stuff too. And the period of gestation, we were like in preparation to be incarnated. Some of us want to come here, a lot of us don't. I've actually heard people tell me stories where they stood outside of black holes and they say, I don't want to go. Well, you're going to go. And they kick them down and boom, next thing you know, you're spanked on the rear end in the living room.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I kind of remember something like that, and I did not want to come here. And what's really bizarre about Naadi astrology is, see, when we exit the womb, time and the synchronization of karma start right at first breath. See, the angel waits till the celestial mechanics of the heavens line up with your particular experience at your location on the earth. Think about that. You could be born anywhere on this planet. And the longitude and latitudes, an exact minute and second you're born, can really change the chart a lot depending on where you're at. North, south, right, east, west, wherever you go. You change longitude and latitude, you're going to shift that chart a lot. Even a slight bit on star parans. See, astrologers have to realize we don't know enough. And I've been working on some of this stuff right now on some really deep projects. Star parans. That means all these stars, the fixed stars that we know about, and we don't know about them all, but the ones that we do, there's literally, if I were to turn on all the fixed star parans across a given continent, it would look like spaghetti. There's that many of them. But when you narrow it down right to the point in time where you exited out of mom's womb, which we all did, right? That literally, you could probably move 50 feet and make a difference, 20 feet and make a difference.
See, I did a presentation on the four worlds, but corresponded to them. It was more of like the magical old Hermetic correspondences to the Hermetic mysteries, but it all kind of, you know, and to the four elements, right? So it all kind of teaches the same thing. It's just, do you think, I'm going to shoot really big here. It's a question I've never asked you before, but what is your thoughts on the flower of life? Do you think there's something to that? I know that when we dig into these texts, especially when it comes to Kabbalistic stuff, the deeper we go, it just dives into like the Hellenistic period and Hebrew and like the, you know, but how far back do you think this thing goes?
I think to creation. I really do. I think the earth, see, now you get into something even way deeper. The precession of the equinoxes takes 26,000 years. It's actually about 25,700 something, or you could say 900 something. No one knows.
Right,
a lot of people say it's 25,900. Others say no, it's 25,700. No one knows. I don't know. I've seen a lot of calculations, and I'll say I think it's somewhere between there. But here's the main thing. If the average lifespan, at least right now, is 70 to 100 years, and we're lucky if we hit 100 years, productively especially, how many lifetimes could you have in 25,000, just short of 26,000 years? An awful lot. Even if certain time periods, I think we live longer. I do believe at certain times we live to be 300 to 700 years, like the old ancient biblical texts say. I think that's true. Well, here on the screen, I have a potential, what we call cycle of the 25,700 or 900 something year. And they're called the ages. You have the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, the Silver Age, the Golden Age, and you climb up on this to the peak of the Golden Age. And then you start descending back down into the sewer. Well, if this data is right, and it just might be, right around 700 BC to about 499 AD, we hit the sewer. That was the rock bottom, right around 499 AD, somewhere around 500 AD. Okay, then we're now eking our way back up. Around 1699, it is believed we moved into the Bronze Age. And Sri Yukteswar, many other people have decoded texts that are very ancient that talk about this. So I know everybody thinks we're in the Aquarian Age. I don't believe we are. I think that might start happening. I
mean, I've been talking about that like, we're in the Aquarian Age. And I've been thinking
it's going to be about 200 and something years from now. I really do. Now, I could be wrong.
The only reason why I've been thinking that is just the and I could be wrong, but it's just the inundation of like truth seeking and information, and I can't think of another energy that corresponds with that more than Aquarian. And
the Saturn Jupiter conjunction. I think the Saturn Jupiter conjunction did that.
You do? Okay.
Yeah. See, there's another system that goes inside of this, and that's more of a inner box of the solar system. They're called the Great Conjunctions. And see, Jupiter and Saturn join about every 1,000 years in a fire trine. That's the first tropical bound. It's called the Egyptian bound of Aries, about every 1,000 years. It's not exact, but it's close, because you got to remember, years don't line up as accurately as astrology does, because years are not linear. That's why we have leap years and all that stuff, right? Nobody can get a calendar that works, right? even the Mayans, one day at a time, right? So the interesting thing is the solar lunar calendar might be more accurate, which is the Hebrew calendar. And what happened is, I think the Masons who formed this country knew we had a great conjunction happening. Notice the Bronze Age began right around 1699. And if this is correct, and it just might be, we had a great conjunction in the first bound of Aries in the 1700s, right when Washington was leaving the British after the French-Indian War and forming the Revolutionary Army. And it's very fascinating, because when you look at the forces behind the formation of the United States, that was a pretty sacred thing, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights.
I have no doubt that the Masons knew exactly what they were doing when they were doing it, for sure. Yeah.
They were steeped in it. Manly P. Hall, who had the blessing to meet before he died, he was getting pretty old at the time. It was back in the 80s. I think he died in the early 90s. And cool guy. And he was a 33-degree Mason. Right. He was just reverent to the founding fathers. And I know the Catholics hate the Masons. They absolutely despise them. And I always wondered about that. It's like, why? Take a look at the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and that seems pretty sacred to me. Certainly a lot better than moving pedophiles around and buying off their lawsuits, right? Like Rome has been doing. Right. And not that I'm here to bash. There's a lot of great people in religions, and I actually
also killed Templars and Masons too back in the day, and people wonder why they keep everything so secret. Well, if you go around preaching or talking about anything other than what the church is pushing, you get murdered. Back then, you get killed. That's what you got. So
the city of Worms, where Luther was tried for heresy, and that, of course, created the Lutheran religion. Prior to that, in the city of Worms, that's where Rabbi Maharil lived. His gravestone's still there, and probably one of my favorite persons to read. What a genius. He wrote the book, The Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. When rightly understood, people understand that is the same holy magic that the Christians, revere Christ with, and other avatars throughout history. Very powerful stuff, where you get command of the fourth hierarchy. And that is not done by reading the sigils in the back of the book or the magic squares. That's not going to happen. An angel has to bequeath that to you. And the only way you're going to get that is if the soul is truly pure. Right. And that is a divine gift from God, literally. And that's why you find many of these avatars, like Christ could cast out demons and all this stuff and heal. That's why, because they're bequeathed that by the upper holy angels. And deep stuff. Well, anyways, why I brought that up is because in the city of Worms, where the Rabbi Maharil lived, a Roman Pope sent a brigade of soldiers up there, and they murdered every man, woman, and child. Take no prisoners, because they didn't believe Jesus was God, and that they believed that God was God and Jesus was the Son. So that's what you're dealing with here. And again, when I see a document created as profound as the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights, I have to say somebody was doing something very sacred, because the Masons, at least those Masons back then, were really good people. They actually consulted with the Iroquois Indians to make our Constitution and our Bill of Rights.
Yep. They were Democratic Republicans, and they wanted to bring the new Atlantis to this place. And I think right now they would be rolling over in their grave if they saw what was happening to us right now, though, honestly.
I think George Washington was the one who said, if you want to destroy a country, loot the treasury. And that's exactly what they're doing. They have destroyed the dollar. And you've now got this polarization going on across the world where, well, what are they doing? They're trying to get off the dollar. If our dollar, if the petrodollar is vacated by the BRICS nations and the rest, we're going to see a depression worse than we've ever seen, ever. Well, and we've got the bankers at the top of the pyramid infiltrating and destroying this country. So the question is what's going to happen? Are we going to be decimated, or are we going to be the phoenix rising up out of the ashes?
Right.
And this election year, with the Pluto return in the United States, and this eclipse plays a part of it, but it's just a part of it, is really going to be the determining at the outcome of this election. And I can tell you, one of the things that's really scary, and I'll show this to you on the screen, is the United States. See, the Earth is a time machine, and it really, really is. It's a place where karma and time synchronize.
Sure. Well, you know what? Can we keep it right there? Because I have to take a station break, at least one.
Yeah, sure.
And then we'll come back. And then maybe we can get to some of your questions in the chat. But I would really like to stick with, if we can, what's going to happen with the eclipse and what Jeff has to offer us. And then we'll be right back. We have to take a short Fringe FM station break here. If you guys want to check out Jeff's website and everything he has to offer, go to jeffharman.com. You can also go to his YouTube channel and subscribe. There's a plethora of information on his YouTube channel. So if you guys watched my small presentation that I did on the Kabbalah and the different trees, he gets really kind of deep into this, a little deeper into this stuff on his YouTube channel too. And I really think you guys, if you're into it, you should go check it out. Okay. We'll be right back. We're going to take a break and we'll be back with Jeff Harman. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere.
All right, bud. I'll take a break myself. I'll be right back.
All right.
Listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Brought to you by our mystery sponsor, a product that is so good that they're paying us to keep anyone from associating it with this program.
Bumper stickers are a fun side hustle with low-cost investment that has built-in advertising to attract local customers in parking lots, rallies, gatherings, conventions, venues, and more. You could potentially sell these bumper stickers on consignment to local businesses, tattoo parlors, head shops, or any other independently owned store that might gear toward the fringe. Bumper stickers are great gift-giving ideas for friends and family. Also, a way to wake up your fellow travelers on the path without having to waste energy in tiresome debates. No car? No problem. Bumper stickers will stick to just about anything with a semi-smooth surface. Go to www.justbsme.com and get your bumper stickers today.
This program may be heard for a slight additional fee.
Musicians experience a lot of frustration with music marketing and promotion. They have no idea how to get their music heard, and they're spending hours sending emails, making phone calls, and hitting up their friends to promote them. With our industry-powered digital marketing platform, we can set up your media plan in minutes. Our team will automatically distribute your music across all the best channels, so you can focus on actually making the music. Submit your music today on our website at mymusicpromoter.com. That's mymusicpromoter.com.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you are interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm, or call 501-777-5633 831 for a consultation.
I'm 54, so basically, it's too late to start saving for retirement, right?
Not right. Starting to save, even in your 50s, can really make a difference.
Well, right now, saving seems hard to wrap my head around. Plus, with the way this year's been going...
Hey, listen, it's okay. You still got this. Just go to aceyourretirement.org. It's an online tool from AARP that can help you get your retirement savings on track no matter your age. It's free and only takes about 3 minutes.
I like 3 minutes.
Yeah, at aceyourretirement.org, you'll chat with Avo, the friendly digital retirement coach. Just answer a few questions and you'll get a personalized plan and tips to help boost your retirement savings. Tips that are easy to understand and tailored to your lifestyle.
I like that too.
Plus, it's sponsored by AARP, so you know they got your back. Just head to aceyourretirement.org and make your plan to start saving for retirement.
Thanks.
That's aceyourretirement.org. A message from AARP and the Ad Council.
Master, we must put on the Fringe FM.
Of course, Igor. Anything else would be monstrous.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void Radio. Sorry, I realized nobody can hear me. So Jeff's been coming on this broadcast since, I don't know, 2015, 2016. So he's been here a long time. And I've learned so much about astrology from Jeff that I can't even begin to learn. I actually, I think I have a playlist on the YouTube channel that shows all of the stuff that, like every single interview that we've ever done since the beginning, I want to say. And so I saw somebody in the chat say, hey, I want to get a reading from Jeff. If you go to his website and you fill out the contact form there, you should be able to get a reading. Isn't that right, Jeff? Just fill out the contact form.
Yeah, should.
Yeah.
And, I think that's how it works. Or you just email us. It's jeff@jeffharman.com. If you just email, we'll set it up. I'm really getting booked out, but yeah.
I bet you are, especially with everything that's going on right now, man.
Oh,
it's worth the wait, though, because I haven't had a reading in a long time, but you know, he's nice enough to do a little stuff for me here on the air. And the last time I had a reading, we sat down for a long time, and he screen records the whole thing. He saves everything. He uses the best professional software, and it's not just, you know, your Western astrology. Depending on what you get, he gets into a lot of stuff. So it's a deep dive for sure.
Yeah, I really like the Vedic and the Naadi stuff. The Naadi astrology is very, very old. It's quite possibly thousands of years old. And that's one of the things, you know, we were talking about with you, Joe, is you're in a Ketu dasha. See, every single person, you know, this is what I love about the older stuff, is that it doesn't treat you as you are your astrology. It's exactly opposite. The astrology is you. It's the synchronization of time and karma with your soul's experience.
Right.
And that's a totally different way of looking at astrology. And I love that, because that's what attracted me to it when I first got involved with it. It's like, well, wait a minute. You know, instead of being your sun sign, which is a lot of love, light, and cluelessness, and then there's some vague accuracies to sun sign astrology, but in Vedic astrology, you'll probably find your sun sign is not the same sign. It's 24 degrees back because of the precession of the equinoxes. So it's called sidereal astrology.
Right.
And I also think tropical is accurate too, because tropical shows the outer layer of the where they call the etheric double meets the physical body. So it's really close to our, you could say, outer reality.
That's what I was going to tell you earlier. The more I kept looking into it, and the more you've told me this stuff, that my sidereal astrology kind of goes along with, at least for me, has went along with what's been going on deeply internally, maybe even unconsciously, I would say, right? And you call it, that's what goes around the soul. And then when I look at my astrological, a lot of that stuff happens too, but it seems to happen more in the physical world to me, you know?
Yep. See, you hit the K2 dasha, and, you know, this is a time of great change and uncertainty. And it's really good for you to wear chrysoberyl cat's eye. That's one of the things I do is I prescribe gems. And by the way, I've got a whole bunch of gems coming in here where I'm getting some of the lower cost gems to help people. See, one of the things that I do is I get natural, untreated gemstones. It's very, very important. I'm not saying all, but I know one of my partners, she's almost 80 years old. She's probably one of the largest distributors in this country, in North America. So I've been around these people for the better part of 35, 40 years. And I can tell you, we have the ways to test and the connections to get absolutely untreated gemstones. It doesn't matter if it's faceted. What matters is that it's unaltered. There's 7 archangels that rule over the 7 inner planets. And what's powerful is you get a natural gem that's formed in the earth. There's something magical about the earth, and lab-grown gems cannot duplicate it. I know I've worked around a lot of people with lab-grown gems. We've looked at them under microscopes. We've tested them with psychics. I'm intuitive, and I can tell you they don't have any energy. Very slight amount. They're going to look gorgeous, but if you're buying them to alter your energy, see, Vedic Planetary Gemology is all about centering your energy with the balance of gemstones and mantras, and very powerful stuff. And I was a skeptic at first, and boy, I held a natural yellow sapphire, and I just went, whoa, I'm buying this, and I did. And I'm so glad I did, because it's really centers your energy. It's amazing. Yeah. And
Hindu, that comes from Hinduism, right? Like the oldest religion on the planet, I would think. Like, doesn't that work?
I think it's pre-Hindu. It comes from the ancient Vedas. And see, a lot of this older stuff in the Naadi is Tamil. It's not just Sanskrit. It's Tamil and Dravidian. There's a lot of different types of languages that seem to have gotten lost in the mists of time. And Hinduism might have come a lot later. So it's very just like the Egyptian stuff. There's ancient Egypt, and then there's modern Egypt, right? So a lot of I really think that I had on the screen before, we tended to head down into, you could say, the lower Iron Age, and the consciousness was really blocked and subdued from about 4000 BC forward. In other words, up to the present date. And then right around 500 AD, we bottomed out, and now we're heading back up. In fact, if I could put that on the screen, if you want me to.
Yeah. Let me make sure that I'm ready for you. Go ahead.
Okay, good. So if we go back to that diagram that I had up earlier, you can see these are somewhat, they're not the yugas, they're the ages. The yugas are much bigger, actually. The yugas, oh my God, those are huge. But we'll just stick with this one for right now. And you can see here what's going on is the next beginning of the Silver Age begins in about 2,000 years, in about 4099 AD. You see, so that's a couple thousand years from now. So we're in 2024, right? So they say that's when we hit this next age. And the Silver Age is very conscious. It's starting to get into much more consciousness. Then from 7609 AD to basically 12,044 AD, we will be in the Golden Age. That's when we hit the Golden Age. See, so we hit the Silver Age ends at about 7609, and again, no one knows if these dates are exact, but let's just keep it simple and say right around 7,600 years from now, we're going to hit the Golden Age, and we'll stay into that until almost 12,500, and we'll still be there. But then we start moving back down the ladder into the Silver Age, then the Bronze Age, then we go back in the sewer of consciousness in the Iron Age. Now, this is got to be blended with the yugas, because the yugas are actually much bigger time frames in this. And the Rig Veda, the Upanishads, especially the Rig Veda and the Ajur Veda, they get into a lot of this stuff. And there's a lot of dispute in the interpretations of this. But I think these ages might be pretty accurate. It certainly seems to fit.
Yeah,
so
I've read a lot of material that backs that up too, about these ages.
Yeah, that's right. And see, it's waves of souls. When you really go back and take this up to, as high as we can look in consciousness, it really appears that the earth is a soul cauldron where souls keep coming here on incarcerations. And they see there's bays of souls at the bottoms of each of these trees. See, that's called Yesod, which means the containment of spirit. And then Malkut, which is the manifestation in each one of these multiple dimensions. Well, they say our souls get trapped way down here beneath the moon and the what we call astral planes here, and we keep reincarnating back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So the religions weren't 100% wrong when they said you're all sinners and you're all going to hell. I think I would rephrase that to we're going to the Naadi Granthas, those are the scriptures in the Naadi, actually say we keep reincarnating until all karma is dissipated, not just the bad, but the good. Well, what could that mean? Well, that might mean that the attachment to this lower three-dimensional, 5 sense, 6 space dimension of time and space, at least in this realm. They claim there's over 300 planets, just like Earth, in this sector of the universe. And they're all at different stages of evolution. The Hebrew documents talk about this too. And that we will keep incarnating in all these different states. And then at a point in time when the soul dissipates its experience, it's almost like we're avatars and we're completely blocked. One of my favorite diagrams to show that is this one right here. This is probably one of the most important diagrams because it fits with some ancient texts. Well, they're actually not that ancient, but they've been penned back in I think it was like the 1400s or something like that. It's a text called the Sha'arei HaGilgam. And you might say, what does that mean? Well, Sha'ar means gate in Aramaic and Hebrew, and HaGilgam means cycling. So an English translation is it's the gates to reincarnations. And anybody can get this book. It's a really interesting read. It was written by Rabbi Luria, and he wrote that from his master, the Ari. Now, many people who study the Kabbalistic stuff will recognize that name right away. The Ari was a profound rabbi who was born, he didn't live very long either. He was born blind, couldn't see anything with his eyes, but he could see souls. He could literally see all your karma and your past karmas. Really amazing. And he bequeathed that information to his kind of protege, who was Rabbi Luria. So, and I love the way this text is written because he's very humble. He actually says, well, I can't remember 100%, but my master said this and said that. So it's written in a very kind but very intelligent way. And in this book, it talks about these layers of the soul, which is depicted on this diagram. And, modern psychology will tell us, well, you've got a conscious mind, right? And that's below this big, thick dashed line. And you've got a subconscious mind above. And I love these diagrams because they really depict it. But a much better metaphor is below this line, and here I'll show you another diagram without the body in it.
The Kabbalists call it the nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama, right?
That's right. That's exactly what I'm about to show you. You're exactly right. See, the nefesh is the lower, what I like to call present personality. It's the keyboard, the mouse, and the screen, or if you like the steering wheel, the gas pedal, and the brakes, that we develop starting in the womb and as we grow. When a child is born, we know nothing. We're completely knocked out. We can't talk. We can barely see when we're first born, according to most medical experts. And then, of course, by the time we start getting into our 9th and 10th months, we're standing up a little bit. Some children are walking. The little seed of the body is forming, but so is the present personality. Well, what's interesting about that is it's not us. See, that's why AI will never be like all of us. Why? Because AI is pure reason and logic for the most part, other than when it's screwed up. And I have seen AI get screwed up. The bottom line is, we aren't that way. We are emotional beings. See, if I zoom in on this diagram, this is why the Vedic Naadi astrologers refer to the moon as the nefesh, or the emotional perception of our reality. It's the seat of the prana of the astral emotional body. So what's interesting is our conscious mind appears to be an amalgamation of not only emotion, but also reason and logic, which makes the lower present personality. It's not us, it's the elemental we have formed in this body, in this incarnation.
Right.
Now, what you were mentioning, Joe, when you back out here and you say, okay, well, wait a minute, the difference between us and AI is we have a spirit, also known as the Ruach, and that affects, and that's an interface from the neshama, which is the karma that seems to be the karmic gunny sack we're all dragging around from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. This is exactly what Naadi astrology says also, that when you draw first breath, that's when the angel ties the spirit, psyche, and soul to the lower physical body at first breath. We're attached by silver cord in mom's womb, but it's not all there. When we exit the womb at first breath, that umbilical cord's cut, boom, that's it. And that breathing could start before the umbilical cord's cut. It's first breath. That's when they say the synchronization of karma and time happens. Very interesting. And we're knocked out. This is, at least in this time yuga or time epoch, we're knocked out. There's a great little way to look at that. There's something called the mark of silence. It's right beneath our nose and our upper lip. We all got it, that division between the left and right, sphere.
Yeah,
of
the little finger.
Face. Yeah, our little finger, right? That's right. That's the one that knocks us out, so we can't remember. Even psychic. So we get fragments. Every now and then we get a glitch in the old matrix, right? We remember deja vus. We remember, God, I know that person. I've met you before.
Right,
Soulmates, it's twin flame stuff, which is probably true. And the cool thing is, but we're blocked for the most part. And that might be a blessing. They say God created time so everything wouldn't happen at once. And I think that's really absolutely true.
I got kind of a deep question, a big question here, okay?
Yeah.
While it's on my mind. And so I started this series a couple of weeks ago because I have a listener that's been diagnosed with ALS. He's approaching the end of his life, and he's afraid because he read some books by Wes Penry that talk about how all of the stuff lines up with what Penry's saying. But he quotes this place as a prison planet, and that the real God is some feminine being above the God that's taught us all our religions and all our mysteries and stuff, and that this is just one big, prison recycling planet. And then when we go up and we see our relatives in heaven and all this other stuff, it's just a trick and all this other stuff. And what I'm trying to do is, like, there may not be any way of knowing the truth about certain things, but so what I'm saying is you're verifying the recycling of the souls, but what I don't want it to do, unless I need it to, is scare the hell out of people. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, I don't know if I agree with that 100%.
Because
and I'll tell you,
he's getting it all from the Gnostic text.
I think it's more divine than that. I think it's much more divine than that.
I do too. I definitely do too.
I do. And there's texts that support it. There's a lot of demonic forces that trick all of us. And, this diagram here, this is a very mysterious, if you go into the Bhagavad Gita, which is definitely used by Hinduism, but that is actually built upon some of the very ancient legends. There's some really cool stuff out there about this. And I mean, you can go down the rabbit hole so far with all this stuff. You'll never figure it all out. But what my opinion is, and I'm not going to sit here and say I know, But see, there is some really powerful stuff. I don't know if you've ever heard. There's a text that's, it kind of parallels some of this. It's called the Enuma Elish. And there's other texts that come out. These are Sumerian creation legends. This is all about, that it gets into the planet that was blown up in between Jupiter and Mars.
Tiamat.
The whole solar system shifted, and now you got the asteroid belts. And of course, you've got everything shifted, and Earth was seeded and created. So there's all kinds of theories and stuff out there. But one thing's for sure, the moon seems to be a satellite that was put here during at least this time frame. And, we get into eclipses. If you took the moon away, or if you change the angularity of this Earth and its ecliptical path around the sun, you wouldn't get eclipses anymore. In fact, there's ancient legends in some of these texts that talk about the moon used to shine all the time. You never had phases of the moon. The only reason you have a new moon where it's dark and a quarter moon and a full moon and a three-quarter moon is because of the angularities of both the Earth and the moon in its juxtaposition to the ecliptical path of the sun. That's it. It's all astronomy. But it means so much spiritually, because I believe the real thing is not the astrology, it's the souls. Right now, there's waves upon souls. The Rosicrucians talked about this. The Egyptians talked about this. The Vedas talked about this. On and on. And I can tell you, so is the rabbinical text too, where these waves of souls keep washing experiences through this soul cauldron called Earth. But it changes. In 26,000 or 25,000 years is a long time. They actually talk about 250 million year galactic cycles in the yugas. Stunning stuff. You can't make this up. So you can never get the same experience in time twice. Because when you start looking at all these expanding and contracting, stars and universes and solar systems, and they all have an effect on creation far beyond what I believe any astrologer can ever read. What we have is good, but I think there are secrets upon secrets upon secrets in this stuff that only the angels know. And I don't know if I buy, and I don't mean to disagree with that guy, but my research and experience and some of the regression work that I've been around seems to say we keep incarnating here until we dissipate our attachment to the physical plane. And I think it's much more divine than just it's a trap, and a trick, because the evil spirits seem to be incarcerated at the very molecular level and quite possibly much deeper than that.
The clip off. They're deep in there. Yeah.
They're deep. They're in creation.
They're probably projecting that onto us. So we're the. Here's the thing. I know you and I have disagreed.
They love to trap souls
on a couple of things.
To consume souls.
But we've agreed on a lot of things, and I've been involved in like the Hermetic mysteries for a while, and that's a process of, theurgy, alchemy, and astrology. These are three different schools, but meant to be done kind of in that order. That's how they were taught for a specific reason, because like when you look at astrology, it's so complex and complicated, yet it's so powerful, and I think
it is.
I think throwing that I think there were lots of books in Alexandria that taught this stuff even deeper than we know, that got just wiped out. Because
there might have been.
From my experience, just invoking the elemental forces from the astral and working on the elements one at a time, it's been tough, man, but it's drastically changed who I am on a deep level. And I don't know, I just think that I could say too that this process is a divine process. I've felt no kind of trickery or had any experiences where I think we create our own hell. That's what I think.
That's right. I think the laws of karma are really at play here. Here's a good example. It's kind of like the old Westerns. That's why, a lot of people like the Westerns, right? Because boom, you get your justice, right? No screwing around. So it's it's like the outlaw Josie Wales, right? Anyways, the point is, I really think we keep reincarnating here, and I'll tell you why I believe that is because it's a lot more sacred. When you look at the laws of cause and effect, and see, this is where the religious people have a lot of problems with astrology, is they say, well, isn't God above astrology? Well, that's right. God is. I mean, you look at this tree that I've got up here on the screen, divinity is far above astrology. What is astrology and what isn't astrology? Astrology is, again, the synchronization of karma and time. That's all it is. And physical bodies in these biological meat suits. But the soul and the spirit are senior to that by a long, long ways. And that's, we think with the conscious mind. And when the conscious mind starts connecting to the ruach, which is the spirit, and transcends the neshama to the wisdom of the soul, which is known, I'll show that to you right here. See, the wisdom of the soul, some people pronounce it the Haya, which is where the collective incarnations start to be remembered. That is not thinking the same way we do. This is like you become all-knowing. And it appears that only happens once you've dissipated out the karma and the experiential energies. Here's a great book. If anybody ever wants to go down the rabbit hole, this is a really cool book that demonstrates that.
I definitely like the rabbit hole. Let's do it.
Yeah, this is a book called the Minyat Yehuda, and it is a rabbi who lived in Baghdad in the late 1800s. Profound book. Now, the first portion of the book is very biblical. It's a bit obscure, but really good. And sounds almost very religious. Chapter, I think 88 is 200 pages long of spirit clearing and deep possessions. By the way, you'll find the same thing in the back of the Shari Hagogam, which is the gates of reincarnation. Talks about spirit possession. And it actually gets into divisions. There are errant souls who are wandering the astral plane. There are evil souls who have collected so many elementals, they call them Yaburs. They call them Mazaks. Mazaks are the really evil ones. The Yaburs are more the wandering, innocent, kind of confused souls. And what's fascinating about this, he gets into some of this. What Yehuda has in his hand here, or Fatea has in his hand, I should say, is a book called Purifications and Rectifications, which is fascinating. I have some of these. They're amazing. And they're all different techniques of fasting and praying and chanting and all this different stuff. You go, wow, that's crazy. I don't have time to do that, right? Well, pretty interesting stuff because it's all about dissipation of karma. We see the same thing in ancient India with the yogis and other places where they're using gemstones to center the person. And then they're also chanting certain mantras to center the consciousness. See, that's where cymatics came from. Right. It was the vibration of all these patterns and angelic squares. Well, what Yehuda talks about in this book, fascinating stuff. One of the stories I love to tell, there's tons of stories in here, where he would be called in, somebody get possessed. They'd be, convulsing. They'd go into what we call today, schizophrenia, or
right.
They'd go into multiple personality disorder, or they'd go into comas. And he'd be brought in. And this one story I love to tell, I've told it many times, but it's a good story because it demonstrates what you were just talking about a minute ago and what we're both talking about. And that is, there was this woman who became catatonic and she was convulsing and everything. And they said she's possessed. So Yehuda was brought in here. I should say Fatea was brought in. And he read her energy and then said, oh, see what's going on. You've got a man possessing you. And he got in touch with the man. And he said, I know you're in there. And the man started speaking. It's kind of like regression therapy. And he starts having converse with him. And he says, you are trapped in this woman and you're hurting her life. And he said, I see what's happened to you. He said, the previous incarnation, he said, before this last one, you were murdered. He said, I see what happened. And the story goes that he was on his way home 2 lifetimes back to his parents. He made a lot of money, had all this gold, right? And back in I think it was like the 1700s. And back then, you bought your parents' servants, right? Now you buy them dishwashers and cars. But back then he was coming home to his aging parents to buy him some servants and give him all this money that he made, right? To help him out. And he stops at this inn and he pays the bill. And after he gets the key, the old innkeeper looks at his young son and says, you see all the gold that guy's got in that bag? He says, man, you get in there and here's the key. Get it tonight. We'll get the gold, right? So the young innkeeper's son goes in, the guy's sleeping, grabs the bag of gold. Just before he gets out, he wakes up and they get in a big fight. The young innkeeper's son kills the man and makes off with the gold. Well, he ends up in the lower Yetziratic worlds, and the angels say to him, see, now this is in the same thing in the Upanishads, talks about the god Yama, which is a lower angelic force. A lot of people call them gods, but they're really an angel. And said, do you forgive this man? And the guy was pissed. He was like Patrick Swayze in the movie Ghost. No, I had a life, man. This guy killed me. I was going to help my parents. Stole my gold. He was pissed, right? So, boom, right back in incarnation. Well, this is what Yehuda was, or Patea was seeing. And then the following, he grows up, little baby, forgets all about it, right? He ends up going to the same inn. Now the young man is in his 60s, right? Because the old innkeeper died and the young son's now running this place, right? Living a life of opulence and all that. So he actually ends up killing the old man innkeeper in the same room that was boarded up until he rented it that night. Very mysterious story. So we hear about this, where we hear certain people do horrible things to other people. There's no excuse for it, but this might be karma regurgitating itself. And there's many books, the Rosicrucians, the Egyptians, the Hermetics, that talk about this stuff, where it's like the Hatfields and the McCoys. You did this to me, I'm going to do this to you. Yeah. Right? How dare you?
It happens in relationships and family and all kinds of stuff, man. Like
family's the worst.
Kinds of stuff.
Now, here's what's cool about Naadi astrology. I can see in the charts, anybody, if you take the time to learn this stuff, whether or not you are here playing out karmas not only in your own life, but also intertwined with the parent. Or a lot of times we have parents that we are at the effect of. I mean, no child is more you could say, under the gun of a parent than when they're little, right? Yeah. I mean, when you're a little kid up till about maybe 14, 15 years old, you're pretty much under the rule of the parents. They own you. And if you have wonderful, loving parents, you're going to have a good life. If you got tough parents, you're going to be at the effect. I mean, how much do we hear this stuff, right? They tell you there's a lot of stories about this stuff. Well, long story short, the yogas in Naadi astrology in your birth chart show this stuff. It shows, it's so amazing. Like, I always wondered what was going on with my karma. And I can see where I had so much karma with the father and my brothers intertwined that was playing itself out. Shows in the yogas of the chart. So you can see the father by the son. You can see the moon becomes the mother in Naadi astrology.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this. Once you saw this, well, I don't, because people get afraid. Like, people feel like they're stuck. And when I always say, and you can correct me here because you know a lot more about astrology than I do, but I always say, like, when you're stuck or you feel stuck or tied to a situation, all you have to do is fix the karma, is just change what you're doing. Change something, like heavily change what you're doing. I think we kind of look at karma as like, I don't know how to explain it, but like, let me fix this real quick. Like, it's a curse, but in a sense, we can fix it while we're alive, right? I mean, it's the golden rule kind of thing.
Well, it's our reaction to it, I think, affects it the most. You see, it's all the ego and emotional attachment. That's why you find, many of the Stoics that in the Kabbalah and the monks and different Stoic, like the Tibetan Lamas. It was horrible what happened to the Tibetan Lamas. I mean, literally, when China came in there, they murdered hundreds of thousands of them. They just slaughtered them. And a lot fled, but I think out of something like 600,000 or 700,000 monks, there's some high number, if my number's wrong, and there's hardly any left. And they just decimated that place. And it's really interesting because the Tibetan Lamas had some really advanced spiritual knowledge, and they were really into astral creation and of the mind and purifying the soul so they wouldn't keep reincarnating. There's a lot of Hinduism kind of borrowed from that, and not to offend anybody in Hinduism, but there's a lot of ancient stuff that seems to go into these religions, the Buddhism, the Buddhism, the Hinduism, and you've got the Sufis, you've got so many different things that all interblend in there, and the Lamas and many others. There's so many different disciplines, but they all seem to point back to one place, and it's very ancient. And I'm not so sure that the Naadi Granthas and the philosophies behind that might be the roots of that. Very, very deep stuff, because nowhere have I found, and I could be wrong, that you see the knowledge of the soul, like the Upanishads. There's a great Upanishad. It's called Upanishad.
It's called the what? You cut out there for a second.
Atma.
The Atma.
The Atma. Yeah, Atma is a translation in English to soul. And it talks very specifically about how, and we see the same thing in the Gita and the Rig Vedas and other documents of the Puranas. This is all about the levels of the soul, and that they liken us to a chariot driver, where our upper soul has agreed to be dumbed down, come in here, and we get attached to these physical bodies, which are born, knocked out, grow, learn, mature, and then ultimately we atrophy and die as an experience. But the ancient techniques, and you find this in Hermetic, almost every philosophy, was to get in touch with the upper portions of the spirit psyche and the upper layers of the soul. They actually say there's 5 layers. And that when we do that, especially in these incarnations, we begin to realize that this whole physical game we're playing is actually not us. And the more we become reactive to it, the more it binds us to it. The less we become reactive to it, the more it frees us from it. And this is what the Stoics would get into. And that if anybody ever gets that book, the Menot Yehuda by Rabbi Fatea, there's mind-blowing stories in there. And he actually talked about this. He would liberate souls from the reincarnation process through these purifications. And some souls he couldn't. He literally said, you're so full of elementals, I have to cut this soul in half, and that fragment will move on to other realms. And this one has to keep reincarnating. I just can't get out.
Do you think that could be what like, say, for instance, I know we're not doctors, we're not psychologists, but you and I have both been around things like bipolar stuff, maybe schizophrenia, things like that. Almost like, and I've seen it where a person can be so loving, so kind, so caring, and there's all this talk about narcissism nowadays. It's a big key word, but, I think you could literally see like the demons playing in principalities and powers throughout people all the time,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Even us.
See, this gets into the biblical Exodus. Oh, possession is so rampant. God, some of the books I mentioned on the podcast, I always referred to the Magus of Strovolos. I love that book. He talks about the elementals that we collect by our beliefs. We're like capacitors. If anybody's familiar with electricity, the human aura is like a capacitor. But like a multi-dimensional one and an extremely complex one. And Dr. Emoto proved it. The third eye chakra emits elementals out into our auric field. What gives them power is emotion. The stronger, you make me mad, right? Or you make me happy. Whatever, all these emotions create elementals on the etheric plane, and they permeate the auric field. These don't go away when you die. There's an old saying, stiff-necked in this world, you'll be stiff-necked in the next. I think one of the most compelling documents is Dr. Carl Wickland. He was a psychiatrist who ran the Los Angeles County Mental Institution at the birth of Hollywood. Like the late teens into the early 20s is when he came in. He graduated from the Chicago School of Medicine. It's an excellent book. Anybody ever want to read it? It's called 30 Years Among the Dead. Probably one of my favorite books. And what a smart guy. Here's a guy who didn't believe in anything spiritual. Mr. Linear, right? Came out of school, knew everything, right? And then the more I get to know, the more I realize I don't know. And nobody's ever going to figure all this out with one of these, because it's beyond that. It's spiritual. It's very, very, very sacred here. It's just the game is until we wake up and realize that. So what Wickland did, he wrote the book 30 Years Among the Dead, and why it's got that title. He actually did not believe in anything spiritual. He had all kinds of weird stuff happening when he was doing his internship as a doctor, to be a psychiatrist, you have to be an MD first, then you become a psychiatrist. So he's the guy who invented shock therapy treatment. And I'm sure people have heard of that. And what he did, it was called a Windham generator. And if you read the book, it's all in there. It's amazing. He moved to the Los Angeles County Mental Institution I think it was in the late teens, early 20s. He's given people shock therapy treatment. I think he even did lobotomies, hideous stuff. And what happened is he went to a party and he met a beautiful woman, became smitten with her, and he wanted to marry her, right? So after he marries her, he finds out she's a psychic channel. And he thought, come on. He said, that stuff doesn't work. I'm a doctor. I know everything, right? Doctor, psychiatrist, right? Know everything about them. So what does he do? He knows she's very intelligent and he really respects her. So he does a study to see if it's delusional or not, or under some kind of psychosis when she takes on these entities. So fascinating, this book, so well written. It was written, I think, in the 20s, and it's been republished in the 70s. It's a fascinating book. Love this book. Anyways, what he said was his wife was doing a channeling, and he had a stenographer or something there recording it all, because back then you didn't have tape recorders, right? So what happened is she took on an entity or a disincarnate soul, we call them ghosts or dead people, right, in her aura. And all of a sudden, the person in his wife's aura looked at him and said, you're the one shocking me with that lightning. And he says, well, what do you mean? And the person went on to describe the shock therapy treatment that he had done to this lady like a couple weeks ago. It's in the book, if I don't get it right. And this person in his wife's body knew every single detail. There's no way they could have known all the things. He even talked about the tray getting knocked over, all this stuff, knew everything. And the doctor's blown away. He's like, my God. He says, you had to have been there. He said, well, of course I was there. You were shocking me. He said, wait a minute. He says, look down. Do you wear a wedding ring? Do you wear a dress? And the guy looks down in his wife's body and goes, oh my God, I'm in someone else's body. He says, you must be dead as we know it. And the guy says, well, that makes sense. He says, because nobody listens to me anymore. Nobody, here's a word I say, and I'm really ticked off about it. He said, well, pal, he says, you have to be the disincarnate soul. So now the doctor gets a light bulb coming on, aha moment. He gets the guy to realize he's deceased. And then he starts looking around and he sees mom. Well, hell, I haven't seen mom. She's been dead for 35, 40 years, right? So do you see where I'm going with all this? Yeah. It's consciousness. See, this is how mind control works. If we beat you and hand you a little biscuit, and it's like Pavlov's dog. If you do what we tell you to do, you get a reward. If you don't, you get punished, right? This is what's been happening to the lower conscious mind since we were all born. If we please mommy and daddy, we got good stuff, right? If we did something bad, we didn't. So that's all good, and I'm not discounting that. But what I am
that's
saying,
the base of psychology and why we do the things we do. It's the base
of psychology, right? Pleasure and pain. So what's interesting is when we exit these bodies, the religions have sorely failed in this department. And there's nothing wrong with a lot of the things that are taught in Christianity and Judaism and Buddhism and all this other stuff. It's all great, but they're not getting through to the fact that, listen, you and I are going to take the pipe sooner or later. I call that death. Sooner or later, we're out of here. I mean, if you figure out how to beat death, please let me know.
Well, that's why I think people feel like it's a slave planet, because you're doomed to die from death.
It's a slave planet to consciousness.
Right. You're doomed to die from death, and you spend most of the time, or from birth, you spend most of the time here working, end and end, working hours and hours. You're most of your life making someone else money. A long time ago, they would say, hey, if you work for me, we'll give you a house, maybe a vehicle, right? Nowadays, if you work for me, I'll give you enough money that you can afford a house and a vehicle. Even more so, I'll give you enough money. Now, you might have to work 2 jobs and you might not make it. But if you do it right, you might get a house.
It's all karma.
And this is
in Vedic astrology, there's all these yogas. It shows why people are poor, why people are rich. It's really wild. I mean, I'm blown away with Vedic astrology. I mean, I really am. The Naadi astrology, the more I learn about it, the more I'm blown away with it. I'll be lucky if I live 5 lifetimes to fully understand. And it says that. It says the humbler you get and the more you realize you are reading the code of angels interacting with time, synchronized with karma in physical reality, the more you realize, whoa, this is like heavy. This is like stunning, and it really is. Like you're in a K2 dasha right now. So you're in the tail of the dragon. Your whole life is shifting. It's hard to land right now. It's very chaotic. But you'll hit Venus soon, and the Venus will be good. But see, your Venus will be totally different than somebody else's. I'm blown away. I really am at how accurate Naadi astrology is. It's absolutely stunning. And where I'm going with all this, back to Dr. Carl Wicklund and such, is that people will keep. There's been so many like priests and various different people, rabbis included, who get brought into regression therapies. They're like possessing other people, and you get them in dialogue. Anybody else wants to read, by the way, 30 Years Among the Dead, the reason it got that title is because for the next 30 years after Dr. Carl Wicklund finally figured out that spirit possession and we don't die is real, that disincarnate souls move on, he spent the next 30 years with his wife documenting the most profound stories you'll ever read. Read 30 Years Among the Dead. Fantastic book. Love that. Another great book that I recommend, there's many, but this one I like a lot because the skeptics they can't refute this stuff. These are doctors. These are psychiatrists. They're psychologists and MDs. Dr. Louise Fry wrote another book that's one of my favorite. It's called Freeing the Captives. She's a medical doctor doing surgeries and all this, doing general practicing and stuff. And she got sick and tired of this whole allopathic world of prescriptions and, let's do surgery. So she became a regressionary therapist. And she documented hundreds of cases where she would get patients under regression, call it hypnotherapy, whatever you want. And somebody else starts talking, well, Hugh, I'm John. What are you doing, John? Well, I don't know. It's really weird. Nobody talks to me anymore. And I'm angry. I'm in this dark place. And John, you might be possessing my patient's aura. He said, well, that makes sense. The last thing I remember, we were out of ammunition. I was shooting away and now I'm in this river. He said, that makes sense. And well, John, take a look around, relax, see. And all of a sudden he starts seeing relatives that he's never seen before. He goes off into the light, quote unquote, and the patient clears up. You can't make this stuff up. These are clinically proven, documented cases after case, and nobody wants to hear about it. Nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Because they just want more medications.
Well, speaking of that, because we only got a few minutes left, from a practical point of view, when you read your chart and you said, wow, this is... I see my karma with my father and all this stuff, and you started seeing your karma.
My mother too.
And your mother, how did you go about fixing it? Because I think that's what people want to do. They want a better life while they're here.
I think I was more in awe of how accurate it is. I always wondered, why did my mother, how my mother met my father? She was walking down a street. My dad was a mechanic. He had hot rods and he had Harleys back in the 40s and 50s. He was really into all that stuff. Anyways, long story short, my mother was walking down the street with her girlfriend, and he dropped a working light off the hood, hooked on the hood. It fell on the ground, and she picked it up and handed it to him. That's how they met. Otherwise, they didn't go to school, together. They weren't in the same school and all that. That's how they met. Next thing I know, I'm the wedding present, right? So what's interesting is they had a really rough marriage. My mom had just turned 18 when I was born. My dad was just turning 19. So what's interesting, I was the wedding present. So the bottom line was, I looked at, why did my mother have such a violent, horrible, because he had alcoholism, a lot of violence, a lot of anger. And you can see in a woman's chart what the husband's going to be like. And when I looked at it, the yogas were eerie. I just said, oh my God, her soul didn't realize it, but that whole event was probably brought about by the angels to dissipate this particular karma that was between my father, us kids, and her. And these are, here's another cool thing. Let me show you something before we go. I got to show you this stuff. Okay,
let me get to the right screen here.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
This will blow your hair back. I make gems for people that are natural and untreated. But what's even more important, let me show you this right here. My computer's going, it's locking up. Here we go. So check this out. These, if I can find it here, So these are various different pendants that I make for people. And let me put this on the screen larger.
So no answer on how to fix your karma. Sorry, you guys. You just have to figure it out.
No, it's not answer on how to fix the karma. Well, you can. There's mantras you can do. There's purifications and rectifications you can do.
Right.
Even gemstones can help you center yourself.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's a yellow sapphire. These are all things I make for people. Notice I always set a gem so it touches the skin. But related to your karma, I think there's two folds. You can't negate karma. You can react to it differently and change your reaction to it is the biggest thing you can do. Because, see, there's many divisions of karma in Naadi astrology. You have karma you can't avoid. You have karma that you're creating, and you have karma that is due at certain points in time throughout your life. Right. These, believe it or not, are the transits and progressions. So if you realize this, the ancient yogis were right. What you would do is you would meet that karma with consciousness of, okay, somehow I've agreed or I'm responsible for this karma. And you could do certain mantras and awareness and not get upset, but you would meet it with, see, this is where the religions were right. Consciousness is above astrology, the upper portions of the soul. And most people don't connect to that. When something bad happens, they get pissed off and they react, right?
That's usually what I do.
Rather than saying, yeah, well, that's what we all do. And the more conscious we get. Now, what I'm putting on the screen here right now relates to this topic. Now, this is a gem I just made for a person. It's a stunning. That's a yellow sapphire. That's a crystal beryl. See, yellow sapphire strengthens Jupiter. You can go on my website, jeffharman.com, and it talks about that. Yellow sapphire actually helps the liver. I've worked with doctors and we've seen the pulses get stronger. And we've actually seen blood work shift when you get natural gems. Crystal beryl cat's eye strengthens K2. That's what you want to wear right now because you're in a K2 dasha right now, Joe. See, I could get you one of these pretty cheap. Anyways,
yeah, what good birthday present if anybody wants to get me one, by the way.
There you go. Well, these make you more psychic and intuitive, and they bring spirituality around. This is a Hessonite. Now, I didn't show this pendant for the gems as much as I wanted to show you this.
The Hebrew.
See these 7 Aramaic Hebrew letters. Yeah. If you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then there's the suffix called Aleph Lamed.
Aleph Lamed,
now,
yeah.
Right. All your angels end in L. Raphael, Gabriel, Uriel, right? Michael, that all ends in L. The suffix of L means it's a angel of good or God. Now, what the rest of this is, and I make these, this is that person's guardian angel by the inner 7 sidereal placements of each planet in the birth chart. Now, you might say, okay, that's cool. It's a very complex formula to get it. You take the eastern horizon, which is where spirit concretizes. See, everyone knows their ascendant in their birth chart. Well, what does that mean? Well, they say when you exit mom's womb, the eastern horizon at the precise point of longitude and latitude where you were born is where spirit manifests. That's why everyone faces the east, right? Look at feng shui, look at Vastu. The east is where the energy comes, where the sun rises. It's also where spirit manifests from the east. I actually saw that when my son was born. I literally saw 2 lights come in. I didn't see any wings, didn't see any angel, but I saw 2 lights join and the whole astral plane illuminated. If anybody's ever been in a delivery room with a baby, let me tell you, it's it's magic. It's
magic. Cry for sure. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I would definitely love to have one of those for a birthday present.
See, these 7, well, these 7 letters are the exact sidereal position of his angel. And there's a formula. It's base 22. There's 22 letters in Aramaic and Hebrew. Mm-hmm. And you can do this in Sanskrit and Tamil too, but I don't know how to do it there. But I don't work in that language as well. But what's so cool, and this is what I wanted to get to, Gematria and Notriacon are numerology. And you take the summated, once you take the birth chart and you deduce exactly where these planets are, then you take the numerology of this order and you look up the Gematria correspondences. I can tell you, I've seen stuff that'll blow your hair back. Like it'll say, oh, this person was a textile maker of colored goods in a previous life. This person is the son of one of the 8 sons of Asher, or was of this tribe of Israel, so on and so forth. You know, the tribes of Israel are all of us. It doesn't matter if you're Jewish or not. There's 12 tribes which rule the 12 signs. And this is where the ancient rabbis were right on. See, the Torah, also known as the scrolls in the Old Testament, and the Tanakh actually hold key codes. And it really got screwed up when the Vulgate translations got done in Rome, because you lost all of that cipher information. The Psalms are full of angels that are deduced out of the Aramaic and Hebrew. And what's interesting is this person's one angel on the eastern horizon. It's one of many, and it'll blow your hair back. And you look at this, and it's talking about all these connections of the soul root to these various different incarnations, as well as ancient, soul root locations. It says we may be connected to myriads of soul roots. It's way beyond what anybody can know. Only an angel would know. I just wanted to show you that.
There's no way of knowing this, but I wonder if that corresponds to the holy guardian angel. Well, I guess someone would have to actually make it through the Abramelin to know that, but I wonder if it does.
Holy God. Well, this one is probably different. This one is there's hierarchies upon it. No, it's not going to be the same. These angels, there's so many angels that guide us, and we're totally oblivious to it. This particular one is the sidereal angel. There's another one in the tropical. Another one is the fixed star angelic degree of the ascendant. Every dasha you hit, like Joe, right now you're in a Ketu dasha. Well, I could look up the angelic force behind the Ketu dasha, and it will show me what the influence angelically is happening through the soul. See, everybody thinks astrology is astrology. No, it's not. It's the matrix of the celestial heavens intermixing time with the soul.
That's why they still consider it in Hermetics the highest school of learning is astrology.
In this dimension, in this dimension, I think it's the highest schools is the upper angels of the soul. That's beyond astrology. But I think in terms of understanding our purpose in these incarnations, astrology is the highest. But boy, oh boy, if we could get a hold of some of the upper angels where the soul was created, I don't even think we would understand the communication until we got rid of the lower conscious ways of thinking, our programming in this lower dimension.
Totally with you on that, Jeff. We've run flat out of time, man, but I really do appreciate the knowledge that you help us with, and continue to help us.
I know enough to be completely dangerous, and so does most people. And, again, I'm not making any claims that what I'm saying is the way it is, but it certainly seems to be supported by a lot of ancient texts and the astrology. The astrology blows my mind. I mean, people all the time in readings, they'll say to me, "How did you know my dad was that way? He was such a great guy." I said, "Oh yeah, I bet he was awesome, well-dressed, and they're like, "How did you do that?" I said, "I just look at the sun." In Naadi astrology, you take the sun as the father, and you take the moon as the mother, and you read the chart as that's the ascendant of the father.
I'm laughing because that's not the report I got. You're like, "Oh man, your dad beat your ass."
And I didn't get that report in my life either.
He sure
Don't feel like the Lone Ranger, pal. We all got a shitstorm somewhere, right?
Yeah, and I definitely think there's a karmic tie there somewhere. Because I keep coming back here.
There's probably no deeper connection to karma than our parents.
Right, for sure. For
good or for ill.
Well, thanks for coming on. I'm sure if people want a reading, they can go to your website. And that's the thing too. I know there's a lot of frustrating stuff out there, Jeff. People are needing guidance, but also people are on the edge. They're also on the edge about, I don't know what to believe. I don't know who to trust. And they feel a pull towards spirituality, right? That we all do. But we're just inundated with people that, no offense or anything, claim to be astrologers and readers and psychics. And I think it's wonderful, but it's also at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that we have to weed through before we can get any answers. And we don't got a lot of time here on the earth. honestly, to figure this stuff out. So,
well, the ancient yogis were right. You know, I was very blessed. I had a couple teachers. They always said to learn the art of ancient Naadi and Vedic astrology and the old traditional stuff, you first have to understand the purpose of karma and spirituality and the soul. Once we get that, then you go back to astrology, because we're not our sun. We're not our astrology. The astrology might be us. It's a reflection of the journey we're at in this point in what we call time. So we are much more noble than that. But the astrology can be useful to unravel that Gordian knot. And like you say, how do we get around our karma? You don't. But you can react to it differently. And here's the cool thing. When the soul changes from the bottom up, that's when the upper angels that influence astrology is an all-wise, all-tricky oracle, and the karma pouring through these will change. That's what's interesting, is you actually can alter karma by becoming more conscious and less reactive to this. I mean, think about our lives. When somebody ticks us off, we can really react, right? Or we can really be hurt. All these emotions, right? And I know I can say this stuff and I'll turn around and go act human in 5 minutes. Right?
Yeah, me too.
We all do.
Yeah.
So we all got to be honest. You know, that's why I had a little problem with the religions, because a lot of them act so holy and thou, and some of them really are. I'll give them credit, they are. And then yet they'll do pedophilia or some of the other. They're human too, just like you and I. You know, and that's why I'm very humble when I do readings, because I don't want to play God, because you know what? I'm not, and I'm never gonna be. I'm a piece of it, just like we all are. But when you're in these bodies, you are subject to biologics, you're subject to ego, and you're subject to what you believe. And that's why it's better to be more stoic and be more humble and just observe. And then we become less reactive, and then we can help people, you know?
I totally agree, Jeff.
Ourselves.
Yeah.
For ourselves.
And thanks for coming on again, man. Seriously, like I really appreciate it. And, you know, you guys want to read and go to jeffharman.com. Go to his website. I know you're booked till the end of the earth probably right now, but it's worth
crazy,
it's worth the wait if you can do it, guys. And go check out his website and his YouTube channel. If you want more Jeff, plug that too. Like how often you do that.
What's that?
The YouTube channel.
Oh, the YouTube channel. We just switched to Mondays. So we come out every Monday now, and they're short. They're usually within a half an hour to 40 minutes. Sometimes they're a little shorter. Sometimes they're a little longer, depending on the subject we do. We hit a little bit of stuff on basic, you know, current events correlated to astrology and what's going on in the world. But then we always get a topic that we get into, which is very similar like we did tonight. And we'll go off on that. And it's a lot of fun. So again, you know, not claiming to tell anybody how it is, but just exploring the mysteries and truth. And that's what's so fun to do. And that'll never stop, ever. The universe in this place is magic, man. There's no doubt.
Go check out his website, jeffharman.com. We're going to get out of here.
Yeah, and the YouTube is Jeff Harman Astrologer or Jeff Harman Vedic Astrologer. You'll see it on there.
Yeah, and if it's HARMAN. If you search that on YouTube, it'll pop right up as well too. Yeah. And go check them out, guys. We'll be back tomorrow night.
Subscribe, and then you get notified when we come out.
Right on. We'll be back tomorrow night with Jason Lingen. We're going to talk about a little bit more about the moon and how it could be a recycling center, maybe to verify what Jeff is saying. And please, if you can, please support the Fringe FM. We definitely need it. It's coming around that time. We love you guys. Sweet dreams. Night-night.